Why aren't the two of you married?
Why should we get married? Isn't that a better question? 20 years ago, no one was talking about mental health.
Hollywood loves to act like everything is glitter and sunshine, but the people who actually lived through those studio lights have stories that would make you look twice. And Goldie Hawn, yeah, the woman everyone remembers for that bright smile and bubbly spirit, has been carrying way more behind the scenes than anyone realized. Now, at 79, she's finally letting the truth out, and the names she's calling out are shocking enough to make the whole industry sit up straight. For years, the industry painted her as the eternal sweetheart, the woman who could light up a room just by walking into it. But behind that glowing image, she was dealing with people calling her greedy, calling her overrated, and even accusing her of being fake. And the wild part? She kept those insults to herself for decades, all while staying booked and respected. Now she's revealing the 6 actors she vowed never to work with again. And trust me, the first name on that list is enough to make anyone understand why she walked away from certain jobs forever. Let's get into the real reason Goldie wanted nothing to do with Bill Murray ever again. When folks think of Goldie and Bill Murray in the same room, they imagine 2 comedy legends bouncing energy off each other. But what really went down? It wasn't comedy at all. It was the exact moment Goldie realized she needed to protect her peace, even if it meant dropping a major project. This happened back in the late 1980s when they were supposed to team up for a studio comedy. On paper, it sounded like a guaranteed hit. America's beloved Goldie paired up with Hollywood's unpredictable fun guy. But the situation flipped fast, and it only took a few minutes for her to realize she was in the wrong room. Bill showed up an hour late, loud like he was trying to wake up the whole building, hair all over the place, and acting like he ran the entire set. He didn't apologize, didn't try to explain. He just tossed a half-empty coffee cup onto the script like it was nothing and said, "Now we can start!" The room laughed because they thought it was classic Bill Murray energy, but Goldie wasn't impressed. She felt the vibe shift immediately. When the table read began, Goldie did what she always does. She delivered her lines with warmth, rhythm, and the kind of flow only she could bring. But right in the middle of a scene, Bill cut her off, smirked, and said, "Why don't you try acting like you've done drama before?" The men in the room cracked up like it was the funniest thing they'd ever heard. Meanwhile, Goldie just stared at him, realizing this wasn't playful teasing. This was disrespect dressed up as humor. She didn't argue, didn't engage, didn't raise her voice. She simply closed her script, stood up calmly, and walked out of the room. That moment landed harder than any comeback she could have fired back with. People always talk about loud reactions, but sometimes silence hits even harder. And that day, Goldie's silence shook the entire production. By the next morning, her team delivered the message loud and clear. Goldie Hawn was out of the project. No explanation, no drama, just gone. She didn't need a press statement or a public rant. She just removed herself from the chaos and kept it pushing. Later, when she opened up to a close friend about the situation, she didn't sugarcoat anything. She said, "He thinks unpredictability is genius. I think it's exhausting." And honestly, that one line says everything about why Goldie stepped away. From that moment on, she made a promise to herself. No more working with people who confuse disrespect with creativity. She stopped accepting roles where she had to tiptoe around someone else's ego. She turned down male-led comedies where she knew the set would be controlled by chaos instead of professionalism. She shifted her entire career path just to protect her energy and stay in spaces where she felt valued. Goldie figured out something a lot of actors learn way too late. Peace is priceless, and no amount of Hollywood magic is worth losing it. And Bill Murray became the perfect example of the type of energy she refused to deal with moving forward. And that was just the start of the list she kept tucked away all these years. When people later asked Goldie if she'd ever team up with Bill Murray again, she didn't rant, didn't throw shade, didn't drag him. She just gave a calm, solid answer. No interest. And honestly, that told the whole story without her having to explain a single detail. But Bill wasn't the only name she quietly walked away from. Another one, Warren Beatty, turned her life into a whole different kind of Hollywood maze, and it all kicked off with one tiny word that carried a whole lot of weight. No! That one simple boundary flipped everything upside down. Back in the late 1970s, Warren Beatty was basically Hollywood royalty. He had fame, influence, power. Every room he walked into, people stopped talking. And for whatever reason, he decided Goldie was going to be his next big pursuit. He started inviting her to dinner, then to exclusive gatherings, then eventually to his Beverly Hills home, which everyone in the industry knew wasn't just a friendly invite. Goldie stayed polite, stayed warm, but she made her boundary crystal clear. She wasn't interested. And that's when Warren's whole vibe switched up fast. The charming persona disappeared, and a colder, calculated side came forward. Almost immediately, Goldie noticed things shifting around her. Scripts she'd been excited about suddenly vanished. Directors who were enthusiastic days earlier suddenly went quiet. Projects she'd been promised were suddenly going in a different direction. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, it was subtle, quiet, and strategic. One producer even pulled her aside and said, "Warren says you're difficult, not serious material." That was the moment Goldie realized this wasn't coincidence. This was punishment. She once told a confidant, "He doesn't handle rejection. Years later, he punishes it." And honestly, those words explained everything happening around her. What started as one boundary turned into a long, exhausting stretch of retaliation that followed her through much of the early 1980s. Warren's power back then was massive, and he didn't hold back from using it however he wanted. But Goldie didn't blast him publicly, didn't expose him, didn't make it a headline. She just kept moving forward, letting the years reveal who was really causing the problems. Then life gave them one final unscripted scene years later at an award show. Warren approached her with that same smooth smile he always used, leaning in like everything was friendly. Goldie met his eyes, gave him a soft, polite smile, and then turned her back mid-sentence. No drama, no argument, just one clean move that said everything she never bothered to say out loud. And the story didn't end there, because the third name on her silent blacklist is one nobody expected: Dustin Hoffman.
If you were born a woman, how would you be different?
The industry labeled him a genius, a legend, an icon. People saw him as untouchable. But Goldie saw something completely different, and what happened between them still stuck with her decades later. This wasn't gossip, wasn't a rumor, wasn't one of those Hollywood stories that float around without proof. It was something Goldie lived through, and it left a mark she couldn't forget. It happened in the early 1980s when Goldie was ready to push past the funny girl image people always put her in. She had already proven she could make the world laugh. Now she wanted to show she could make it feel something deeper. She wanted to step into dramatic roles and stretch her skills. So when producers called her in to read opposite Dustin Hoffman for a high-profile drama, she took the opportunity seriously. She walked in ready to deliver, ready to show her range, ready to step into a new chapter of her career. But instead of receiving respect or professionalism, she walked straight into an audition that left her stunned and disappointed. People expected that audition between Goldie and Dustin Hoffman to be this explosive moment of talent and chemistry, but the energy in that room flipped in the worst way possible. It wasn't electric because of brilliance. It was electric because the tension was thick enough to slice through. Right in the middle of their reading, Hoffman just stopped cold. He stared at Goldie with this blank, heavy expression before turning toward the producers like she wasn't even standing there. Then he said, "She's still playing it like a sitcom." And the whole room froze. That line didn't just land wrong, it hit her with the kind of sting only disrespect delivers. Goldie didn't react, didn't let her face break, didn't give him the satisfaction of seeing her annoyed. She kept her posture steady and finished the entire scene with this clean, controlled confidence that spoke louder than any comeback ever could. Once the final line was done, she thanked them politely, walked out, and didn't let anybody get a follow-up word in. The next morning, she didn't complain, didn't vent. She just called her agent and said in the calmest voice ever, "I'm out. I'm not fighting for respect in a room full of men who already decided I'm a joke." That one sentence ended the whole situation, and from that day forward, she made sure her path never crossed with Hoffman's again. When someone later asked about that day, Goldie said, "Some men forget they're not directing the women around them." And that one line, that was her quiet revenge. Hoffman thought he was exposing some kind of weakness in her craft, but all he really showed was how much his ego took over any space he walked into. Goldie didn't argue, she just walked away from the noise like she always does. But Hoffman wasn't the only name on her silent list. The fourth one? Chevy Chase, and this one ran deep enough to crack an entire friendship in half. Goldie once told someone close to her, "If I ever have to smile next to Chevy Chase again, I'll walk out of Hollywood." And she wasn't exaggerating. That's how far things had gone between them. That statement alone shows why he sits at number 4 on the list of people she quietly swore off. Back in 1978, foul play looked like the kind of project that could only win. Goldie was the sweetheart of the country, and Chevy Chase was the guy everyone saw as the next big comedy powerhouse. On camera, they had effortless chemistry, the kind the audience loved. But behind the scenes, it was rough, chaotic, and downright draining. Chevy arrived on set like the place belonged to him. He cracked jokes at the wrong times, mocked lines he didn't like, and constantly rewrote scenes without checking with anyone. His energy didn't just disrupt the production, it threw everybody off rhythm. And whenever something didn't go exactly his way, he'd sulk for hours, dragging out shooting schedules and frustrating the entire crew. But the worst part came from something even pettier. He couldn't handle it when Goldie got a bigger laugh. Whenever her line landed harder with the crew or the producers, Chevy would mutter under his breath, "She's lucky to be here." It wasn't playful, it wasn't teasing. It was jealousy, plain and simple. Goldie did what she always does. She tried to keep things light. She joked with him, tried to smooth things over, kept the peace wherever she could. But even she couldn't hold everything together forever. And the cracks became impossible to hide after one particular night. They were working through yet another disagreement about a scene, something Chevy insisted wasn't funny enough for him. The conversation escalated, and Chevy reached a boiling point. He stormed off the set altogether, telling people he wouldn't return until the director rewrote the scene exactly how he wanted it. That moment showed Goldie something she never forgot. Chevy wasn't interested in teamwork. He wanted control. And when someone refused to bend, he made everything difficult for everyone around him. Goldie stayed behind on that set, sitting on the steps like all the energy had been drained out of her, just trying to breathe through the stress of it all. When the cameras were off and nobody was watching, she leaned toward her stylist and whispered, "He's not funny, he's just mean." That right there summed up everything she'd been holding back. By the time filming wrapped, she and Chevy Chase couldn't even meet each other's eyes. Whatever friendship they once had was long gone. The studio didn't care about the tension, though. They saw the box office numbers and begged her to sign on for a sequel, throwing millions at her like it would fix the emotional toll she'd paid. But Goldie didn't even pause. She told her agent immediately, "Not interested." And that was the end of that chapter. And then came number 5 on her quiet list, Sean Penn, someone she thought she'd never have a problem with until one night changed everything. Goldie thought she had already seen every flavor of arrogance in Hollywood. But she was wrong, because nothing prepared her for the moment Sean Penn embarrassed her in public. This wasn't some backroom argument or tense moment on a movie set. This happened under chandeliers, at a charity gala, in front of a ballroom full of people who watched it unfold like it was part of the program. It was 2014, and Goldie had been invited to give a short, heartfelt speech about mental health, something she deeply cared about and had worked on for years. When she stepped on stage, the room got quiet out of respect, except for one voice. Sean Penn, sitting at his table, sighed loudly, rolled his eyes and muttered, "Another celebrity wellness sermon." People around him heard it. They just pretended they didn't. Goldie still powered through her speech with grace, delivering every word with heart. When she finished, the room burst into warm applause, but Penn leaned back smugly and said the line she never forgot, "She should stick to giggling." Goldie didn't react, not in public. She kept her chin up, raised her glass politely, and slipped out of the room early. But once she was in the car, the mask fell, and she quietly said, "My whole career, and I'm still reduced to giggles." That moment cut deeper than anything she'd dealt with in years. From that night forward, she drew a hard boundary. She refused to attend any event where Sean Penn's name appeared on the guest list. And she didn't budge on that rule, not even once. When someone asked her about him years later, she answered instantly, "Not my energy." She wasn't angry anymore. She was simply done. But the final name on her list? The biggest twist of all. Kirk Douglas. People would have expected her last grudge to be with someone loud, someone difficult, someone who clashed with her on set. Not a Hollywood legend known for his iconic status across generations, but fame doesn't shield anyone from making someone feel small. Goldie never went public about the details for a long time, but what she experienced around Kirk Douglas stayed with her. Not because he yelled or insulted her, but because he made her feel invisible in rooms where she should have been respected. This wasn't a battle or an argument. It was the kind of quiet dismissal that cuts deeper because there's no scene, no outburst, no moment to call out. People idolized him, praised him, and spoke about him with awe. But Goldie remembered how he made her feel like she didn't belong, even when she was already a rising star with her own accomplishments. And that feeling stuck with her long after the spotlight faded on those interactions. Kirk Douglas earned the final spot on her private list not through chaos or disrespectful outbursts, but through something just as damaging. He erased her presence without saying a single harsh word. And that type of dismissal leaves a mark Hollywood rarely talks about. It all went down during a big industry panel in the late 1990s, one of those events where every major name gathers under bright lights, pretending everything is polished and perfect. Goldie came in with the weight of her achievements, an Oscar winner, a producer, a respected force in Hollywood. Kirk Douglas was already a legend by then, the kind of icon people whispered about with admiration the moment he walked in. When he greeted her, he flashed that classic grin, took her hand gently, and said, "You haven't aged a day, sweetheart." The crowd chuckled like it was charming, and Goldie smiled as expected, but on the inside, the comment hit different. It didn't feel sweet to her. It felt dismissive, like he was putting her right back into a box she'd outgrown decades ago. Once the panel actually started, things got even more uncomfortable. Every time Goldie tried to speak, Kirk cut her off, once, then twice, then a third time, each interruption sharper than the last. He finished her sentences, corrected her thoughts, and shifted every topic back to himself, as if the whole room was there for him and him alone. It wasn't loud disrespect. It was the kind of subtle undermining that hits harder because it's wrapped in charm. The moderator later admitted, "You could feel her frustration, and honestly, anyone paying attention saw the shift." Goldie went from glowing to ice cold, her expression locked into that polite mask women in Hollywood have worn forever when they're being minimized in public, but aren't allowed to react. After the event, she pulled a close friend aside and finally let her real feelings show. She said, "He talks to me like I'm still the blonde in a bikini scene. I've won an Oscar." And that one line told the whole story. He didn't see her evolution, didn't see her accomplishments, didn't see her as an equal. He saw the version of her that fit his era, his worldview, his idea of where a woman should sit in a room like that. Goldie stayed warm with Michael Douglas, though. She praised him often for being a modern gentleman, someone who didn't carry the old Hollywood habits that crushed women beneath polite disrespect. But when it came to Kirk, she never brought his name up again. Not in interviews, not in private circles, not in passing conversation. The silence was the boundary. Years later, when reflecting on everything she'd been through, she said quietly, "Some men don't deserve a second act in your memory." And that was the final strike, the truth wrapped in calm, grown woman wisdom. Kirk never knew he'd landed on her private list, never knew his behavior had carved out a space in her mind she refused to revisit. And honestly, that's the part that stings the most. People always see the glamorous smile, the red carpets, the awards, but they never imagine the quiet battles, the subtle disrespect, the emotional exhaustion behind the scenes. Goldie carried all of that with grace, never airing out these names, never exposing these men publicly, and never letting bitterness steal her shine. She just protected her peace and kept moving forward. So now that you've heard the real stories behind Hollywood's famous golden smile, which one shocked you the most? Do you think Goldie made the right call by staying silent all those years? Or should she have spoken out sooner? Drop your thoughts in the comments because this one has layers. And before you go, make sure you hit like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss any of our deep dives into the stories Hollywood doesn't want you to hear. We've got more celebrity drama, more untold truths, and more behind-the-scenes secrets coming your way. Check out the next video that's already waiting for you on the screen, and I'll see you in the next one.